best podcast hosting platform? What's the best podcast hosting platform? What is the best host platform for podcasts? Like, people are going to ask this question in so many ways. That's why I'm asking it for you. What's the best podcast hosting platform? Send help. We need to answer this question today because I believe this is one big question a lot of people have been asking. And I feel like if we answer this question and do it correctly, it would be a great experience for us all, because in the end, we'll be able to understand what we want to do, where we want to go, and what type of content we want to show up for. Because gone are the days when you're just creating content because you want to create content. There has to be a definition. There has to be a reason. There has to be a validation that's going to help you as a business understand exactly where you need to be long term. So I thought about this question, and a lot of people have been asking this, and I said, hey, why not bring it to Clubhouse? Why not bring it to the We Don't Play podcast show? Why not bring it to Marketing Club? Why not bring it to you and ask you what platforms that you're using? So if you have a podcast, if you have started a podcast, if you've never started a podcast before, this is the time to learn about your podcast, and we're going to talk about them today. So thank you so much for the comments. I see Nasli said Castbox, and Devanshi said YouTube. Devanshi, welcome to Clubhouse. I see you got a party hat. Welcome to Clubhouse. This is a great place, and I'm excited that you are here. Definitely looking forward to more rooms like this with you. Ash, Tim, Kazutaka, Alana, and Drod, and everyone else that's going to be coming in within this hour. Thank you for being here and listening. You are welcome. And Mita, thanks for being here. She's trying to get in. So, what's the best podcast hosting platform? Now, I got some responses in the chat, and I want to address this real quick. There's a difference between a podcast hosting platform and a podcast directory. Now, the answers that were given in the chat are directories. So if you think about directories like Yellow Pages, Bing, Google, Yahoo, those are directories, right? That's where you go to experience information or experience brands. The same thing applies to Castbox, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, Pandora, Amazon Music. Those are podcast directories. Alana, thanks for being here. Looking forward to this room. Just getting started and realizing that I need 100 followers on Facebook to stream live. Yeah, speaking of streaming live, Facebook have released, it's not too long ago, I don't know if you know this, but they do send out emails and notifications within the app that after 30 days of going live on Facebook, you would have to download your live video or it would be deleted indefinitely off the app. And that's something that is very scary for creators, because people wonder, oh, all these live videos I've been doing for all these years, especially during COVID, during the pandemic when people were going live on YouTube, on Facebook, and now they're being deleted. How do you move, right? And now am I stuck? You're not stuck. You just need to get out the box, because getting out of the box means that you use a reverse engineering process and use Facebook last instead of first. How do you use Facebook last? You use Facebook last by going to Facebook to publish information back to your website. So when you have a podcast is where you're able to distribute content. Just before, actually within the last 24 hours, we released 3 episodes. One episode was yesterday's topic, because we were here yesterday, really going deep into the discussion of, how do you create your content in a better way, but at the same time using it with Pinterest for SEO strategies. And then I also created an AI overview. There was an AI summary. If you ever heard AI have a conversation about a podcast, you can go to Notebook LM and try it for yourself. And there's an AI conversation summary that we did. On top of that, we had an interview that we just published today. If you guys like infused coffee and fruit beverages in one, check out Java Twist and listen to the podcast episode on the We Don't Play podcast show. I'm going to put the link in the chat. We can also hit on my face. I have a lot of links. If you look at my picture, you hit my link at the bottom, you'll see Plank Online and 7 others. So you can also click the link in the chat if you want to listen to the podcast and know more about what I'm discussing here. So podcast directories are different from podcast hosting platforms. I think I'm going to do a room on that. Welcome, Dr. Lisa and Boslaw. Big difference between a podcast hosting platform and a podcast directory. Podcast directories are for consumers. Podcast hosting platforms are for producers, right? So if you're a producer, then, or you're creating something out of a production, then it's going to be the finished product or the retail product or even the wholesale product that the person is going to see. Either it's coming as a full season, which is a wholesale, I can call it like that, syndicated show, or it could be a sequence where within a week, you're having episodes pushed out on a weekly basis or a monthly basis or a daily basis, depending on how you do it. Now, if you're using Facebook to go live, I would highly suggest, if you want to do this on Facebook still, use StreamYard. Go to StreamYard.com, and then because you're going live on these platforms, even though they'll be deleted, you have the original copy within your dashboard. That's important. So when you now have that important video file that you went live on, Facebook, YouTube, wherever, you now download that same video, and then you now go to your podcast hosting platform. And then from your podcast hosting platform, that's where you're able to now distribute it to Apple, Spotify, all these platforms that we listen to podcasts on. But here's a caveat. They don't just automatically show up on those platforms. You have to manually distribute them. Just like you have to distribute milk or distribute food or distribute supplies to 10 chains or franchises or businesses or wherever you want to distribute your products based on the contracts and stuff that you have. That's the same thing that applies to your podcast. You have to manually supply. So if I knew that I'm supplying my product across 10 stores and my competitor is doing it around 10,000 stores, who's going to have more visibility? The one that has 10,000 stores over the one that has 10 stores. But the one that has 10 stores could still be popular because locally that's all they need. So that doesn't mean that 10 is better than 10,000. It just means that 10,000 has a wider average or a wider spread net than 10. So your goal is to ask yourself, do I want to be listened to locally or do I want to be listened to internationally? And that's where the podcast hosting platform comes into play. Because when you look at podcast hosting platforms, there's a lot of noise that a lot of people don't know, because people just start podcasts and say, yeah, I got a podcast. Where is it? It's on YouTube. Okay, that's not real. Yes, it's real. It is a podcast, but it's not real as an actual podcast, because a podcast means iPod plus broadcast. So if you're just on YouTube, you're only broadcasting on YouTube. It's not really broadcasting as a podcast should be, because a podcast is radio style. Radio is not only on one station. There are different FM stations. There are different AM stations. So what is your station saying when somebody tunes into your podcast? Because podcast is just like radio. It's just that it's pre-recorded. That's the major difference, right? I'm going to talk about this link I just put in the chat. It's called Podcast Stats. And this is from Listen Notes. So if you go to listennotes.com/podcast-stats, or you can just go straight to listennotes.com with 2 N's /stats, you're going to see the stats. There are 4.5 million podcasts in the world. Listen Notes says there are 3.5 million in the world. Ivy.fm only picks out about 1 million of them. So there's always going to be a scattered graph, but just know there are under 5 million podcasts in the world. And out of these 5, or under 5, let's be more specific, 4.5 million, and how you can know how many exactly they are, you can go to Podcast Index. I'm giving you guys information today because I don't want you to be guessing things. The more you guess, the more you waste time. So I put the link in the chat. It's called podcastindex.org. So go to that website. It's free. Check it out. Freely given, freely giving. Get it, check it out, look at the numbers and ask yourself, where do I fall within this category, right? If I fall within A or B or C, it's for you to understand it. If you look for your podcast and search for your podcast, if you're not on that podcast index, then you're not even indexed at all on the web. Because being indexed on the web means that you have content that people can see. And it's not just about your podcast. It's about who you're showing up for and where you're showing up at, right? There's a website called episodes.fm, right? That's a website that you can check. I'll put my own link in the chat so you can see, because I'm really spraying y'all with links because I want you to really try it out for yourself. This is not information that is just for me. This is for you, because you're going to keep asking this question every time. What's the best platform? There's always going to be better than best or best than better, whatever you're going to say. At the end of the day, whether it's good, better, or best, you have to still understand that your content is still going to be the most determining factor that's going to determine if that person is going to stay or not. There's some people who don't stay listening to you for a month, a year, and they come back and they're like, whoa, what did I miss? Some people can't just stand hearing your voice. Some people love to hear your voice. You don't know those things until you try. But how you don't know? It's just in the air, right? Don't knock it till you try it. So you try by knowing exactly where your audience is. For me, for those who don't know, because I don't assume everybody knows this, my podcast is called We Don't Play. And we're going to be 6 years, August 13th, 2025, in less than a month from now. And we have produced, let me say it this way, we have published over 540 episodes, and we have recorded over 100 episodes that are yet to be published. So technically, we have close to about 700 episodes that are in the pipeline that are still yet to go out, and at the same time are still being binged online, which has allowed us to cross and stream across 151 countries globally. And we're in the top 25,000 out of 4.5 million podcast shows. This is not something that happened overnight. And if anyone tells you that this thing happens overnight, they're lying to you. And run. Don't even look back, because you're going to turn into a pillar of salt, because you don't want to stay back. You don't want to become stagnant. You don't want to have a status quo. You want to grow. And the way to grow is by understanding the algorithm. When you understand what the algorithm is looking for, you're able to really know what it is. Because if Google's code of conduct is EEAT, which is experience, expertise, authority, and trust, then how can I trust you if I can't trust your voice? That's the first question. So if I can't trust your voice, then that's a problem. You trust your mother's voice, you trust your father's voice, you trust your grandmother's voice, you trust your grandfather's voice, because there's authority and there's respect with the voice. Same thing applies to Google, YouTube, whatever other platform it is, because when you're now giving authority to those platforms to use your link as the authority checker based on the topic that they're searching for, it's you that they're going to come back to. So if I can't trust your voice, then there's no way I can trust what you're saying. I'm not even listening at this point. It's passive, because I'm not actively connected to what you're actively trying to say to me. So if there's going to be a disconnect between those two, then that's going to cause a disrupt in the flow. But if you're able to switch it and say, okay, let me see what platforms I can use that will trust my voice, meaning technically that I need to choose the best podcast hosting platform. Elena says this is good. Thank you so much for the feedback. You have to understand where your podcast hosting platform is going to be technically. Because when you look at the stats that I just showed you, if you go to listen notes and you look at the stats, just read the numbers and see what you find there. Very interesting numbers that you'll realize. If you scroll down this page, you'll see that the highest year that let me say it this way, the highest year podcasts were ever done was in 2020. In 2020, there were 1,021,368 podcasts that were published for the first time. Because back in 2020, everybody was chilling. I started my podcast in 2019. So I had a feeling that a wave was coming. I needed to speak out. I needed to voice out. And then Clubhouse came in 2020. If it wasn't for me starting a podcast in 2019, I would not be on Clubhouse in 2020. So everything happens for a reason. That's why I'm here, and why we're even existing and having this conversation in real life is because of decisions that were made prior to today. So the same thing applies to you when you start asking yourself, what platforms do you want to be on or show up on? It determines everything based on how you show up from the source. So your podcast hosting platform is where you're hosting your podcast. Just like when you have a website, you have a domain, and your domain is being hosted within a hosting platform. So if you're using WordPress, right, that's a CMS platform, content management systems platform. Now, if you're using a platform like WordPress, you would need something like a Hostinger or a Bluehost or a GoDaddy or a SiteGround to keep your website hosted so that you can have hosting servers that are going to serve traffic and also maintain bandwidth to your DNS, which is your domain name server. I always say this, your DNS is like your DNA online. The way you have a very unique DNA in your body composition, that's the same way your website has a very unique DNS, which is a domain name server. It has specific records that are uniquely identifying that this is a property of this platform.com, this domain.com. So if you're going to be putting your content within this DNS, it's still a technical SEO setup, because when you have a podcast and you choose a hosting platform, the platform is going to ask you, what is your website URL? Because the website you're going to put in your hosting platform is a website that's going to be put across all these distribution sites that you're sending it to, all these podcast directories, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, iHeart, Pandora, SiriusXM, Angami, Geo7, Castbox, Player FM, Episodes FM, Moon FM. Like, there's so many. I have a whole list. And that's when we onboard. And please click the link above if you want to have more information like this. We can help you get set up. Just click the link above, choose the option, and we'll get that straightened out for you. There are many platforms that you can submit to. When you submit to these platforms, it doesn't end there, because it's like saying, okay, we moved everything in. Now we got to use what we booked. If we build something, we're supposed to use it, because it's something called a depreciation asset, right? So if it's depreciating by 2%, by 0.2%, whatever the percentage is per annum, at the time that you're using it, your goal is to also make sure that your podcast is also being seen from your website. Because if your website is where anchoring everything is coming from, then what's going to support your website is your content, right? So when you have your content is supposed to allow you to show up on these different platforms. Now, here's the thing that I really want to go down into, which is the meat and potatoes of this discussion today. What's the best podcast hosting platform? There's no best, but here's what you need to check for. This is something you need to check for. Are you ready? This is something that will be very important for you to check for. You need to know. You're welcome, Devanshi. Thank you for that feedback. You have to know whether the podcast platform that you are signing up to is IAB defined or IAB certified. What do I mean? IAB stands for Interactive Advertising Bureau. What does that even mean? It just means that there's a body, there's a bureau. Like, everything that we're doing is very important. So don't just think like podcasting is playtime. it's a real business, especially if you go into licensing, into intangible asset management, acquisitions, and really understanding what you're using your brand for. Just look at Joe Rogan, look at Call Her Daddy, look at all these, Mel Robbins, look at the, Jay Shetty. Look at these great people who are doing great stuff, right? Neil Patel, amazing people who are really going out there and killing it. They're really making sure that, you're able to listen to it, and there's no excuse for you not to know what is available to you, because the internet is open. It's just what you want to feed into your own network that's, based on your importance. So when you're looking at IAB, right? IAB in podcasting is the body pretty much that sets a standard for downloads and listener behavior on the web. That's literally what it is. The Interactive Advertising Bureau literally understands, they set the standard for downloads, for listener behavior, technically consumer behavior on the web. So if you're now thinking about content, right? Podcast now is focused on digital forms. So if we're thinking about videos or audios, these are going to be things that are being in the form of MP3s or MP4s. So when you're looking at the file extension, and you know that this is a downloadable, streamable audio, just like you can download music, you can download movies, you can download audios. We can download these things, right? And then from that download, that is a signal that goes back to IAB. So if somebody downloads your podcast episode because they like it, and they can download it on a platform like a Castbox or a Player FM or Apple Podcasts, that's a great gain. If they can listen to you through Amazon and say, hey, Siri, or hey, Alexa, and then you're able to see your podcast show up, or at least have your podcast within the citations, that's a great gain. So these are platforms that I keep mentioning that if you're thinking about long-term, you have to ask yourself, are these podcast hosting platforms IAB certified? I'm going to give you guys some shocks today so that I can give you some examples of what this looks like, because I know research might just be complicated, and that's why you're here, because you don't want to go through all that typing or even asking the question. So you want to get it right here. It's going to come right here. If you want to listen to this, and this is the episode for you that you want to understand how to scale, please listen to this as well. Now, when you think about the IAB podcast, right, you have to also think about where people are gaining information from, right? Because at this point, if you're looking at podcasts, not every podcast has IAB. For example, this is like it's sad, but it's the truth. It's the reality. Spotify for Creators is not IAB certified. And that's why it's free. And it makes sense, because if it was IAB certified, then there would be a lot of policy laws, and Spotify, I don't even want to go too deep into it, but when I see it from entertainment law, when I see it from the business perspective, from entertainment business, I understand why they did that, because Spotify for Creators is free. Megaphone.fm is paid. Both of them are still non-IAB. But at the same time, because Megaphone has their own system internally, they're able to still have quote unquote IAB connections, meaning that if you're using Megaphone, you can still do what others are doing that have IAB, because they have their own Spotify audience network. Now, other platforms can't say the same thing because they're not as big as Spotify. So if you're non-IAB like other platforms, then it's just a default. That's why Spotify for Creators just hits, it's like they just get hit with a whammy because it's just like, okay, if y'all are here, y'all can stay, but that's where it's going to be. You're not going to get anything more than what you're already getting, because we're not optimizing it for IAB certification or even having that advertising into play, because you can monetize on the platform, but it's not going to give you that robust look and feel that you want. Now, you're going to now say, okay, Favor, now, because you said that, how do we know what is and what isn't? The best way to do it is just to choose your I'll make this very easy for you, because there are so many questions, and I want to just decentralize everything into one. And here's the one thing I want to say. Go to Google and then ask this question. Is fill in the name of the podcast hosting platform you want to be on IAB? Hit enter. For example, is Buzzsprout IAB? Go to Google, type in is Buzzsprout IAB, hit enter. Then you're going to get a response. Then they'll tell you when they were certified, because it's like your business. If your business was incorporated, it will say incorporated at this day, because that was when it was incorporated, right? The same thing with the hosting platforms. So when you think about these hosting platforms, it's for you to decide, do you want to monetize your podcast and actually scale it, or do you just want to do it for fun and then figure it out at the end of the day? It's up to you. When I started my podcast, honest to God, truthfully, and you guys can even listen to the very first episode, you'll even tell, August 13th, 2019. I started this podcast focusing on just giving information, feedback, whether it's music reviews, giveaways, news updates. I was literally trying to be a radio for everyone. And I was like, yeah, we don't play. We don't talk about things that don't matter. We focus on things that matter and help you get better at what you do every single day. And that started happening. And I spoke life into the podcast. God just took it off. And from there, boom, things have been happening. 500 podcasts in now. I'm like, okay. It was in year 3. I said, okay, this is not a joke anymore, because we're operating a business. But I was using this as a vertical because I was thinking, okay, yeah, people are listening to the podcast, but do they even know there's a business? Because some people will come and say, hey, okay, is this just a podcast? Because some people are just podcasting for fun. Some people are just podcasting just because there's a microphone and there's a click, there's Wi-Fi. But there are people who are podcasting that actually their life, their business, sales, PR, branding, consistency, availability, showing up is what makes them who they are today because of what they're doing. It's like saying your favorite radio host doesn't show. You'll be like, what happened to this person? Are they okay? Man, I miss them. They should be back soon, right? Like, you start thinking like that because you're so used to listening to this person that the day you do not listen to this person, you're confused. You're like, okay, something is missing. Something is not right. That's because you've gained so much information that it's now part of your daily routine. It's a part of your daily style because you want to learn something new. I'm sure you're learning something new from this episode today, because if you didn't learn something new, that's fine too. Because at the end of the day, I'm learning something myself that, okay, there are things that we need to understand and ask ourselves. How do people know these things? If they don't, how can they know them better? So that's why I'm really hammering down on this thing, to make sure you know what the difference is between a podcast hosting platform is and a podcast directory. Those are two different things. So Buzzsprout is IAB certified. They've been certified since 2020, right? So you're able to do that and use Buzzsprout if you want to, right? They're not bad. They're really great. You can use them as well. You can go to another option and say, okay, is Spreaker. Shout out to the founder of Spreaker. I got to meet him, and he also, came to the podcast as well to talk about a great tool called Pod SEO. I'll talk about that too. Is Spreaker IAB? Yes, Spreaker is IAB. It will tell you as well, and it will give you all the information there. It will just give you all the information on Google. Technically, there's something called an IAB Tech Lab. What is it? An IAB Tech Lab, right, is a nonprofit organization that develops standards for digital media, including podcasting. So when you think about IMDb for movies, you think about books, like the ISBN for books. I'm also in music. I've been making music as a self-taught drummer and producer, have songs out there. It's 2 decades now, so I've been heavy in music, and I understand when it comes to music, there's something called an ISRC code, because there's royalties, there's a lot of things that goes in the entertainment business industry. That's why when you hear all these stories about people like Prince or Lauryn Hill, with masters and things like that, I understand those things because I am in the industry. So when I look at everything from books, with ISBN numbers, to audios that are ISRC numbers, because you have to think about Nielsen, SoundScan. You have to think about, are you certified on BMI or ASCAP, so that you're also protecting your property, your intellectual rights. The same thing with your podcast, right? Your podcast has an RSS feed. which is a really simple syndication file. Just like you have an XML file for your website, which is an expandable markup language file. So I'm giving you these terms and definitions. So when you Google them, you're able to understand more about what these things are, because when you're more, let me say this, when you're more aware of what you're doing, you have a more cognitive response and a sharper focus on what you're really trying to achieve out of the task you're trying to set, or even milestone. So when you're creating content, don't just leave your podcast on YouTube, because that's where a lot of people are missing it. Yes, YouTube is one of the top most listened to places for podcasts, but it should not end there. Your podcast should be the ending point, not the starting point on YouTube. If people are going to listen to you on YouTube, it's because you're showing up elsewhere. But people only go to YouTube and stop there because they feel like that's where it's only available. But if you're on podcasts and you have a YouTube and you tell people, hey, we're not only available on YouTube, check us out on Apple, on Amazon, on Pandora, on here and there, people will say, oh, you're also there too? Okay, let me check you out. Some people don't listen to Apple Music. Some people focus on Spotify. Some people don't use Spotify. Some people use Tidal. So everybody has their own thing. So it's for you to decide, what do you want to do with your thing? And how do you want to build it? So when you ask those questions, are they IAB certified? And the answer is yes. The next thing now is for you to now say, okay, if these things are really good and they're actually making sense, then the next step of action is for you to now create content that's going to deliver through that hosting platform. And then you're able to now use it and spread your wings. But not every platform is going to give you exactly what you're looking for. For example, Spreaker, they're very big on, podcasting and hosting, but most of their features are, even they said it, is on live features. So they have these live features that you can use when you're podcasting, and it's really great for monetization, especially if you're doing host-read ads and things like that and branding. But if that's not your business model, then that may not be the platform for you. You might just want to hit record, upload, publish, and go back to your day. That's something that you can do on a different platform other than Spreaker. You can use Buzzsprout. There's Libsyn, right? You can ask, okay, is Libsyn IAB? Libsyn, let me do it for you guys. So Libsyn, is Libsyn IAB? Yes, Libsyn is IAB. And it will tell you they're fully certified under the IAB 2.1 standards. So when you look at these platforms and you're seeing what they're saying, that's going to tell you something, because how you're going to know that these platforms are actually doing well is when you start actually reading the numbers and knowing how many audiences and listeners that people are getting. Because when you're looking at podcasting, yes, there's downloads and there's listens, but there's something called average monthly listens and average newly monthly listens. Because there's a difference between, if you've been listening to me all month, then you're an active listener. But if you've never heard me speak and now you're listening to me for the first time, you're an active new listener. So you still count, because you're still counting to the download that's being done through transcribing and through scanning through the timestamp. If you're listening to my podcast or any other podcast for more than 30 to 60 seconds plus, that's counted as a download. So what is an actual download? If I'm downloading a song, it's because I want to download and listen to the song. Some people play the song back over and over. Some people use podcasts instead of music. So however you're going to use your podcast is how you're going to express yourself to people. The realer you are, or the more real you get, the more people actually want to connect with you, because they're like, this person's not fluffing. Yeah, I can hear him. Like, there's no cut, there's no chop, there's no screw. This is what you get. And that's where the authenticity comes from, because people get to hear you, connect with you, and then learn from you. So look at these things and ask yourself, okay, can this thing work? Is this thing actually helpful? And can I even do it to the best of my ability? Now, there's another platform I want to talk about too, just to make sure that you can also check the health of your podcast. Because you can use all these platforms, but you also need to know how to validate it. There's a website called castfeedvalidator.com. I put it in the chat, in the description as well. Click the link so you can see it. Castfeedvalidator.com. What does that do? Castfeedvalidator allows you to plug in your RSS feed or your Apple Podcast link. And when you put your link there, what it's going to do, it's going to give you a report card, just like with SEO. This is podcast SEO. you're going to get a specific answer based on how your podcast is. And it's going to tell you whether you're on the right server, whether you have the right tags, even your cover art, right? If your cover art goes past a specific limit, that's a problem, because that also means that on other platforms, they may not have the bandwidth to upload your cover art. So they might have to truncate it, which now causes a defect in your podcasting. It's kind of like those little things that you don't know where this 80 cents went to, this 30 cents went to, and now you have less than $15. You're like, huh? What happened here? So that math is not mathing, because you're like, oh, what's going on here? Yet there's some things that were missed because you're on the wrong platform. Another thing is like prefixing. What is prefixing? Prefixing means that, let's say I have a podcast on, let me say hosting wise, I have a hosting on Spotify for creators, which used to be called Anchor. That's when I started podcasting. It used to be called Anchor.fm. So from Anchor to now what they call Spotify for creators, it used to be called Spotify for podcasters. Now it's moved to Spotify for creators. So I think they want to involve other people, not just podcasters. So Spotify for creators has your RSS feed. Then let's say you go to a white label, you go to another company, or you open up another podcast show, and you're saying, okay, this is the same podcast, but on another platform. Now you're creating a prefix that is going to be called, it's like, how do I say this? It's going to be a byte. And what is a byte? A byte means that the time it takes for your podcast to hit play. So if I hit play and it takes me 5 seconds before I hear your voice on the podcast, that's a problem, because it now means that you have prefixes that are biting information on the back end, which will technically tell whichever hosting distribution platform that, hey, we got a podcast here, it's been distributed on this platform, but because it's going through 3 different levels, it's like distilling water. It's going to take a longer time to get to the bottom of the bottle, because now it has to distill longer, and that longer time creates latency, and that latency delays the experience, which now creates a dip in your rankings. So all these things are counterintuitive if you don't realize that if you're just focusing on one platform and one platform only, then that's the platform you want to be on. And I've seen podcasts that will just start off here and then end up somewhere else, or not even have a congruent or aligned way of connecting back, which is a problem. So the best way to solve this is, before you start a podcast, do your research. Ask, is this platform IAB certified? Even before you think about that, the reason why you're asking that question is because you want to monetize. If you do not want to monetize, you don't need to ask that question, because all you want to do is just show up on Apple, on Spotify, go to the free platform, go to Spotify for creators, go to creators.spotify.com and sign up with an account, and you're ready to go. You can do it on your own. Now you start distributing to all these platforms and start optimizing your pages. Now the SEO and the technical and the strategy and all the scaling comes to play when you really know what you're talking about, because most people just think, oh yeah, I'm just going to put keywords in my titles, in my descriptions, and that's going to work. No. Partly yes, but the full answer is you have to incorporate those keywords into your speech. Because if ChatGPT, if Siri, Alexa is going to respond back to a question that you did not answer in your podcast, then how are you going to be the citation for the person asking that question to the answering engine machine? It got to make sense. And how you're going to be a respondent is in the form of a link. And that link comes in the form of your web page, which comes from your website, which is from your domain, which is part of a hosting. So at the end of the day, it's like we, even as human beings, we have a body, we have a spirit, we have a soul. So we can't detach those 3, because those 3 are intertwined into one, just like the Trinity. You know, it's 3 in 1. God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. They are 3 in 1. They're things like water. Water is solid, liquid, gas. That's 3 in 1. So there's some things you just cannot detach, right? We just have to accept it. And we also have to respect it, because without those things happening naturally, we're not going to get the full effect of what we're trying to get at. So why I'm very particular and very meticulous on telling you why this is important is because when you start thinking about the podcast platforms you want to be on, even as a guest or as a show host, things are going to start to play a big role into your business. Because if you don't create content for the right people are not going to see it. You have to write things well. If you have a brand, start off with your brand name. Say, my brand name, this is what we do, episode 1. My brand, this is how we work, episode 2. My brand, FAQs about my business, episode 3. You keep doing that. Eventually, you're like, okay, why not? Episode 4, episode 5, episode 6, you start realizing, okay, now there's way more I can actually do as a business, which can actually take my business from point A to point B. So now your question of the day is, if somebody wants to learn about my business, do I have the right information that's going to take them to my dream or not? If not, then that's a different question, because some people are there for branding, some people are there for interviews, some people are there for connection. This is not my brand page. Hello. I don't understand what that means, but please let's talk about that. So you have to create your content that is going to help the person understand whether you're showing up as a brand, as an author, as a speaker. You can even use it for different reasons. There are 5 types of podcast styles. 5 types of podcast styles. The first one is solo. And either of these options, you can do them together or you can do them by themselves. There are no rules. The first one is solo. The second one is interview. The third one is co-host. The fourth one is roundtable. And the fifth one is theme, or you can call it no faceless content, however you want to put it, but just something that is centered around a theme, whether it could be sound bathing, or it could be nature sounds, or it could be whatever it is that you want to put together, pet sounds. That's a theme because it's going to focus on a specific niche, right? So when you start bridging your gaps, and even between these 5 styles, there are 3 subtypes of podcasts. There's a full episode, there's a bonus episode, and there's a trailer episode. So you have to also decide, where do I fall in between these pipelines? If you've never heard this before, yes, these things happen. If you have a new season, you have a trailer before your episode. If you have a bonus, the bonus is going to be different. Like I mentioned earlier, the bonus episode was the AI summary of the episode we talked about yesterday with Pinterest. Because if somebody doesn't want to listen to 47 minutes of content, they can listen to the bonus summary for 12 minutes and get the same information. So you make life easy for people by making things convenient. The more convenient you make people's lives, the better they want to come back, because they felt appreciated. They felt welcome. They felt like, okay, this person cares. If you just throw them at 5 hours and stuff like that, yeah, fine, cool, they can binge. But if they don't have timestamps, if you're not putting timestamps in your videos, if you're not putting FAQs or summaries or things that are going to let people know more about your podcast, then that's a missed opportunity, because not everybody is going to hit play on your episode. But what I realized, and how we went to the top 25,000 out of 4.5 million shows, what really took us up there outside the SEO and all the great stuff that happened, it was focusing on the show notes, putting FAQs in the show notes, frequently asked questions, because when people read those frequently asked questions, the ball is in their court. Now it's like, I've given you all the information that you need to know about this show or this episode. And because you came here and now you have the information you found, are you willing to listen to this for 20 minutes or 40 minutes? Or because I have a timestamp, or because I talked about it in parsing, now can that actually be parsed through the information-based system and now give me feedback that I can actually scan through? For example, if you go to Apple Podcasts and you open any episode, there's something called a transcript on the bottom left side. When you hit that transcript, it's going to populate, just like with lyrics, with your music, it's going to populate the text. So you can literally, this is something, if you've never tried it, please try it out. There's a little magnifying glass. Hit that magnifying glass and type anything within that podcast episode that you want to talk about. For example, with this one, if you want to see like podcast hosting, then hit the magnifying glass and then type in podcast hosting on Apple Podcasts. And when you hit that enter, you're going to realize you're going to see highlighted yellow or yellow highlighted key phrases that said the number. Actually, it tells you 2 things. It tells you the number of times the word podcast hosting was said, and then it highlights and gives you the sections where it was mentioned. So if you're mentioning your brand as a business and you're actually verbalizing it, you're vocalizing it, because some brands, you have to know what they actually, like Chick-fil-A, someone can say Chick-fil-A, right? Somebody can say that because they may not know how it's pronounced, right? You can say Reebok or Rebook. You can say whatever. you want to say because that's what comes to your mind first. But when you start hearing Coca-Cola, when you start hearing Tesla, Apple, you start hearing words, Microsoft, you start hearing words that you're like, okay, that's how it sounds. Okay, makes sense. Hobby Lobby, you're able to say, oh, okay, yeah, you can read it, but what if it said something? What if they said it differently? That could have a completely different connotation. So when you now start using those words and saying them in your podcast episodes, either as a guest or as a host, you're registering that voice in the mind of the listener. And as they're listening, it's going to become an imprint, no-brainer, innate thing that will happen over time because you're able to really allow someone to really understand who your brand is and what your brand is all about. And then when they say it back to you, just like I tell you what my name is, you say it back the right way. If you said it wrong the first time, I'll correct you. Some people call me Favor, Favor, and because the U is confusing, yet it's pronounced favor. So don't complicate it. So when someone hears that, they're like, oh, okay, next time I see it, I don't have to think about what to say because it has already been said. So when you now use your brand and you mention your brand on a podcast, you're pretty much giving life to your brand because now your brand is actually being heard, it's being seen, it's being remembered, and it's being acted on because it's actually clickable. I can hear the sound Nike. Oh, I can hear that. Okay, I can watch it. I can see it on Super Bowl. I can feel it. I can go to the store and touch it. I can actually feel it. Maybe I can purchase it online and get it in my store. That's a real feeling. So when you want to really bring your brand to life, it's not Instagram Reels that's going to bring your brand to life. It will help you bring brand awareness, but what's going to bring your brand to life is when brands and search engines are responding back to you in the form of ChatGPT, Alexa, Siri, and giving you information that you can actually enjoy based on the questions that you're frequently asking the engine. So I hope this helped you understand the difference between a podcast hosting platform and a podcast distribution platform. You have to be on all podcast distribution platforms from your podcast hosting by submitting your RSS feed to the podcast directories. So you see the difference? You come from a hosting, it's like saying, oh, I have a house. Okay, in my house, I have 5 backyards. I have 3 patios. I have this and that. And you're like, okay, this one is going to go here. This one's going to go there. It's kind of like you're creating your own castle, your own utopia. So if you don't want to be featured on Spotify, fine. Don't submit to Spotify. If you don't want to be listened to on Pandora, fine. Don't submit to Pandora. Nobody's forcing you. But if you want to be listened to those platforms, and if that's where you want to show up on, then you have to manually submit it. And it takes less than 24 hours to be accepted. Technically 2-3 hours, you should be fine. Maybe even within an hour, depending on the platform. Some platforms take up to 2 weeks. Like I know Angami and Geo7, because they're more Middle Eastern and more of like India and like the Middle Eastern area as well. For Angami, Geo7 is India specifically. That might take 2 to 3 weeks, but what's 2 to 3 weeks compared to 2 to 3 years of dominance of 20 to 30 years of consistency? So it's up to you to decide, what do you want to do with your podcast? Where do you want to show up on? Who do you want to show up for? And why are you even showing up in the first place? Then that way you're able to say, okay, I now know what the best podcast platform is for me. Now let me start putting content into it. Go to podseo.com and start tracking your keywords. You have to know your primary keywords, your secondary keywords. You have to know exactly how you're speaking. If it's for asset acquisition, if it's for business purposes, if it's for lead generation, if it's for response marketing, whatever it is going to make sense. Because what I also realized too is that when people search for your podcast, it's not only the title and the show notes and all the good stuff you have in your description that's going to count. It's also what you say. Because if you said something and somebody types in, just like you type in the lyrics, la, 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 and you type in those lyrics, you're going to find the song that matches those lyrics. That's the same thing that happens with your podcast. If you type in the words that you said or pronounced or actually verbalized on your show, then when somebody's looking for what you actually said on a podcast, you're going to show up in the search results because you captioned it in form of a voice. So that's why the voice can be captured through Spotify or captured through ChatGPT or captured through any other source, because that citation is giving you dominance. So when you think about your citations and then you're connecting your citations to your website, that increases the power of your podcast by a huge mile. And it just starts off with a little step. So at the end of the day, if you need help with this information, click the link above, sign up, choose the option that you would like, whether it is from SEO services, email marketing services, website development services. If you want to join the mastermind, if you want to have Pinterest services, we'll get that taken care of for you. And that way you can start ahead of the game, because there are a lot of podcasts out there, but if yours is not doing well on being seen, it's going to be a problem. Now I'm talking to a company and we're about to start thinking about how to start running commercials with brands, because a lot of brands are actually spending money on podcasts. With brands that you know are spending money on podcast shows. And you don't have to be a Joe Rogan, you don't have to be, Mel Robbins to get this. You just have to be yourself and just be real to the people you're talking to. And then when you realize, oh, okay, cool. Like for me, I know my audience literally from what I saw from the stats, my audience are above average income. And I see where they're located. I see the brands they like. I see they're from higher education. I see all these things. So I'm reading the numbers and I know people are actually listening. Smart people are listening. I'm not the smartest person in the room. So for sure. So that's why I very humbled and also very happy to also come here and give you this insights, because sharing is caring and we're able to really grow together. So that's why I do this on a consistent basis and give you all the love. Thank you, Alana, for that feedback and the love too. So we got 2 minutes to go. I got to jump into my calls, but I've made sure that I give you guys this time today because it gets busy, but I always love to be here because consistency is key. And I'll say content is king, context is queen. So we have about 1 or 2 minutes to go. So does anyone have any question for me? Put it in the chat, raise your hand, let me know. If you don't, then all minds and hearts are clear. I appreciate you. Pete, Tim, Boslaw, Rosemary, thanks for being here. Mason, Mita, Alana, and Gerard. For those who are here and you have a pink ticket, please click the very link at the top. We are very close to 352,000 members. We're just short of how many right now? Yeah, we're short of, it's 9:45. So yeah, we're short of a really good small number that if you just think about your business right now and where you could be, a lot of good things could be happening for you, right? Just think about where we could actually take this to by the time we go back, time from now. We have 55 more members to 352K. And when that happens, I know this place is going to be turned up and people will listen. I know you all listen to the replays. I get notifications that, replays were listened to in 2022. 2022? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for listening, because I know that these things are important and it's evergreen. We're not going anywhere. If you can keep the system and the system is working, the foundation is strong, then you always have a long-standing house. You always have a great building. You have a great fortress. And a lot of people can work with you and connect with you. So I definitely look forward to working with anyone that needs help. And, if you need help, please reach out. What is a good starting budget? For podcasting, honestly speaking, it's $0. That's how I started. I'm not even lying to you. Like, don't fancy over these gadgets or cameras and get this. If you've never marketed or monetized your podcast, those are the least things to worry about. The thing you should be worrying about is what hosting platform am I on? Is it free or paid? If it's free, okay, Bootstrap. Okay, I have Zoom, or I have my phone, I have my recorder, record stuff. Go to Part SEO and put those things out there. If you really want to think about a budget, really, put $1,000 for a year and then use it like a cash machine. Take $2 out, $5 out, $50 out. But what you're using that money for is either ads, or you're using it to buy a subscription to maybe clean up your voice, because there are AI tools now that you can actually upload your voice, your episode, and AI will just clean all the fluff and the ahs and the ums if you use those things. We don't need to use it, but for our clients, we get to use it if they need it. But it's available, so you can have that in your budget and then create that if you want. But honestly speaking, I started my podcast without any budget. We've not run ads. to this 150? How do you run ads to 151 countries? What would that budget even look like? So it's hard to determine that when there's so much going on at the same time. So don't think about the budget, think about the impact. That's what I would say. So I hope that helped you. Focus on the platform, focus on the content, focus on delivery. Platform, content, delivery, you'll be straight. 500 episodes in, you always figure it out. I'm still figuring it out myself, 500 episodes in, and I'm still far from where I want to be, but I'm definitely not as far. Let me say it this way. I'm not as far from where I need to be because I've taken the steps to be as far as away I am from where I was yesterday or the day before, the year before. So if you just look around and say, okay, if we have 5 more months to go in the year, how many episodes can I pull that can actually attract the right people that I could actually talk to, and then brands can actually work with me and businesses can actually do business for actually a good price? Because when you look at pre-roll, mid-roll, and post-roll, pre-roll is right before the episode starts. Mid-roll is in between the episode, which is usually the juiciest part. That's where people make the most money because that has a higher cost because of engagement and stickiness. It's like Super Bowl. People do it at the halftime show because everybody is halftime ready. So think about it like that. And then there's post-roll, which is towards the end of the episode or after the episode is done. So either way it goes, you can price it from, people charge from $100 up, episode. So you can do a lot. Just think about it. Imagine if you made an extra $100 a week or an extra $1,000 a week or a month, or depending on how that money can accumulate if you just did it correctly. If you need help, we can get you sorted out. Click the link above and we'll definitely get you in there. Until then, thank you for being here. Really appreciate you for your time and for your love. I'll definitely be back with more episodes like this. Hope to see you soon. Take care. Have a wonderful evening or day wherever you're in the world, and I'll see you in the next episode. Now, that was an episode, right? Thank you so much for listening to the We Don't Play podcast show. I'm so glad that you're here and you are sticking tight with us, especially to the very end. Now, this is season 11 and we're going to do it differently. And I want to make sure that every episode you listen to has something to give back so that you can also learn more after you listen. Now, We Don't Play podcast show is where you listen, you live, you learn, and you earn. So if you're in any of those positions out of those 4, please make sure that you reach out to me. Send out an email through info@playinc.online. That's info@playinc.online. Or you could go to playinc.online, which is a website, www.playinc.online, playinc.online, and schedule a call so that we can get you on an SEO discovery call to talk about your business and help you with your marketing needs. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope this helped you. See you in the next episode. God bless you. Jesus loves you.